right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I was trying to look professional, and I had a jacket, but it's really hot, so I'm just going to let it all hang out. So my name is Benedetta. For the past 10 years, I've been working on trying to tackle real-world challenges through open hardware projects, because apparently I love impossible missions. It all kind of started in 2004 when I was sleeping on a beach in southern Sri Lanka when the Indian tsunami hit. And that kind of instantaneously transformed me into a survivor and also a first responder. So my life has pretty much never been the same after that, and it really changed my outlook on things. So after that, I decided to jumpstart a couple of businesses focused on open engineering, prototyping, and field testing of solutions for humanitarian challenges, environmental, wildlife conservation, and pretty much just social challenges in general. And I also had the pleasure of working as researcher in a couple of different academic institutions and consult for different companies. But I've worked on some really awesome projects in different parts of the world with a great roster of partners that range from large governments and large humanitarian organizations to NGOs, academic institutions, down to just really awesome individual researchers. There's plenty of challenges for people like us to tackle, and as you can see, there's a full agenda for the next 15 years, and I assume many, many more through the Sustainable Development Goals. So I encourage everybody to participate. It all started for me with my super naive attempt in graduate school to understand the process of tsunamis, and I apologize for anybody here that actually has a scientific background. And I wanted to kind of understand the process of tsunamis and also understand the workings of like $300,000 piece of equipment, and I wanted to recreate that with $300 worth of hardware. The hardware didn't fail, my math failed miserably, and the project got repurposed into a live performance, and I wish that was a joke. My very first real project for a client was in partnership with UNICEF to explore the possibility of building a network device in order to aid community healthcare workers in diagnosing severe acute malnutrition in children in rural clinics in Uganda and other parts of Africa. And it was a fantastic experience. It was my first experience in the field, and it was a huge learning curve. And it gave birth to a lot of other projects that sort of highlighted gaps in the challenge that we were facing and problems that they hadn't really thought of. I've worked on some really kind of out there projects. We did a Kickstarter campaign that was fully funded to build open source lion tracking collars to help conservationists in Kenya who are mediating the conflict between the Maasai herders and lions. And we really wanted to build them tools that were going to be open source, in contrast with the extremely proprietary and prohibitively expensive tools that they use today, so that they could actually modify their devices, so that they could collect data in whatever format they wanted, they could change the batteries, they could attach sensors. And again, this project sort of became a larger platform because we talked to a lot of different organizations and a lot of different researchers needed to track some kind of moving target, for example, vaccines. So this became like more of an open source tool suite. Most of the projects that I've been involved in or I am involved in include a lot of kind of whether M2M devices or some type of device that needs to communicate data with the rest of the world. And so I became really interested about 5 years ago in open source telecommunications in general. And it turns out that it's a lot cheaper and more feasible when there's no infrastructure to even just jumpstart your own cellular network. So I've been really into exploring open source cell networks, and I've set up some demo units for different clients, and I've kind of been geeking out on that ever since. On the infrastructure side, I've worked on projects that had to do with energy, like microgrid shared solar systems, and more recently on a project that's aimed at bringing 24/7 access to clean drinking water in rural areas and unstructured settlements in different parts of Africa. And this has been kind of an ongoing project that we're working with a fantastic team on, and I've been sort of on and off on it for years. All throughout these projects, there's a lot of common threads and a lot of common lessons learned, which I think a lot of people have touched on today. There's a lot of them, but if I could summarize it to the most important one is ask real questions, ask the really hard questions, and trying to get to the bottom of a problem without assuming what the problem is or taking for granted what other people have said the problem to be. Fail early and fail often could not be more appropriate for this field of work, especially, and somebody had touched on this today, sharing your failures, because sharing your failures in this kind of realm really helps people save resources that they would otherwise spend in remaking your same mistakes. Building sustainably with locally sourceable parts and also harnessing local talent and local skill is absolutely fundamental for any of these hardware projects in the field to actually live in the long term. I was never blessed with patience, so this is something that I'm personally really struggling with, and I'm still kind of constantly reminding myself that tackling these type of challenges requires years and on-off efforts, and they don't happen overnight. It's a really long, hard road, and success in this type of realm is really more about not giving up and not getting completely jaded and frustrated and continuing on. When I first started working on humanitarian projects, people thought I was absolutely insane. Since then, things have changed quite a bit. There's also a lot of organizations are really moving forward on innovation, and they're really starting to understand good design principles. They might still be shy on spending resources on hardware projects, but they're really big proponents now of open standards and open source tools. The only thing is that your definition of open source might not be their definition of open source. So you still really need to have tough conversations about questions of ownerships and tech transfers and things like that. But it's moving in the right direction, and really open source in terms of hardware solutions is the only way to go in order to make things that are scalable and sustainable, especially when you talk about hardware in terms of maintenance and technical training and knowledge transfers. Those are all things that open source really makes possible in these kind of environments. So in order to encourage people to really kind of tackle these type of things, I've been teaching classes and workshops around these topics. More recently, I taught 2 classes at ITP, one called Towers of Power, which is around GSM infrastructure and how the GSM network works, how you can roll your own cellular network, how you can build your own cell phone or your own M2M devices, all using open source software and hardware. And also network sensor for development, which is exactly a class about building sensor networks for humanitarian purposes. I wanted to make the class fun and engaging, but I really wanted students to hit some critical lessons learned that they would normally learn by actually field testing things. So I gave them some very specific design challenges wrapped kind of in a fun way, but it was amazing to actually see them hit and learn things that in a couple weeks that I learned after years of being in the field. Some amazing projects that took advantage of the classes were, for example, Say-Cell by Edwin. Edwin started a community cellular network for unserviced areas in Nicaragua. He managed to fund this project, and also he installed a fully functional network the most recent one was in Port Lagoon, and then he did a previous installation I can't remember, the name escapes me, but he's already done 2 full installations and he's planning on scaling. Network compost sensors by Kina, where a system of compost sensors that were installed in the field. He also wrote a fantastic instructable, and they were installed in partnership with different composting sites in New York City. Some of the students really took those design constraints at heart and really focused on making things efficient, open source, and low power. So some focused on indoor quality sensing for households and for health conditions in households in developing countries. Some people built their own low-cost water monitoring sensors with recycled materials or easily available materials. Not all the projects aimed at saving the world, but they were still pretty fun. For example, BedVibes Desk was kind of a critical look on vibrating notifications that you get on your cell phone and how annoying and disruptive they can be. Or a real handset that allowed you, it was a fully functional cell phone and a glove that allowed you to make calls with more intuitive gestures and speed dial your friends. What I've been really interested in recently, other than teaching and consulting, has been kind of trying to release open source designs for people to really build their own communication tools. And also I'm trying to get back to the root of my interest in this world, in this field, which is pretty much emergencies. Moving forward, I see the open hardware process for humanity to be extremely user-driven, a process that should be shared and very collaborative in order for it to really be locally sustainable and have the type of global impact that I know it can have. And I'm very positive and I feel really strongly about the fact that it's people like you that can contribute and make this vision happen for the future. Thank you.